Welcome to the 70.3 Oceanside highlights for 2024, where every second mattered for the first race of the Ironman Pro Series. There were 31 women looking to jump into that cold water in Oceanside and get their season kicked off. And the one name who was kicking off her season, who everybody was calling for the win, was Taylor Knibb. She'd only ever once been off the podium in a long distance race, and that was at the Ironman World Championships in Kona last year, but she's the two-time 70.3 world champion. She won Oceanside here in 2022, and she only seems to be getting better. However, the one question mark was that she is preparing for the Olympics right now, and had that taken anything away from her middle distance game? It didn't seem like that right away as the women got going in the swim. However, Fenella Langridge was looking to take it to her from the start. She took to the front right away, right next to Taylor Knibb, and the two of them would end up swimming side by side for the rest of the swim. Lauren Brandon was actually a last-minute dropout from this race, and she would have definitely featured at the front. But there were a few other women trying to be there. Kate Curran was the only one who managed to stick with Taylor and Fenella, but Paula Findlay, Grace Beck, and Grace Alexander were less than a minute behind, and they were in a pretty good spot to start the bike. However, that was about it, because the rest of the field was a long ways back. It was 4 minutes back to Brittany Vogt, Lisa Becerras, Tamara Jewett, and Emma Pallant-Brown from the front. So Taylor Knibb, Fenella Langridge, and Kate Curran had a fantastic lead on everybody. Fenella Langridge and Kate Curran wasted no time getting out on the bike, as they wanted every second they could get on Taylor Knibb, who took quite a long time in transition, almost a minute more to put on socks as well as some gloves to make sure she was warm going out onto that bike. It looked like that swim had phased her absolutely zero, and even though Paula Findlay, Grace Beck, and Grace Alexander joined her in transition, she wasn't worried at all, because she knew none of them would be able to go with her. She's just in another league right now on the bike, and even though Kate Curran and Fenella were pushing hard to stay away at the front, it really wasn't long at all before Taylor hit the front of that race, and they weren't able to go with her either. And then eventually, quite further back, was Tamara Jewett and Emma Pallant-Brown, the fast runners in the field. Tamara won it in 2022 with the fastest ever half Ironman run split, but with 4 minutes already back on Taylor Knibb, it looked like they wouldn't be able to utilize that run speed to catch her anytime soon. And especially on a day like today, where Taylor was riding faster than a lot of the pro men, and she gained 2 minutes into the first 12 miles, flying past Fenella Langridge and Kate Curran, taking to the front of the race, and she would never look back. Emma Pallant-Brown was riding the best of the rest, and actually would end the day with the second fastest bike split, despite apparently riding off course for a bit. She was faster even than Paula Findlay, who had the third fastest bike split, and was having a pretty steady race, although she did say it was quite lonely out there. But eventually she did catch Fenella Langridge about 2 hours and 10 minutes into the race, and the two would ride the rest of the race together. Now, there were some other good riders in the field. Danielle Lewis was flying on the bike, Lisa Becerras as well, coming back from her hip injury. Grace Beck, like Taylor Knibb, took a while in transition, but she rode really well, coming off of a second place result at 70.3 Geelong just a couple weekends ago. Now, I think we all knew Taylor would come into T2 alone and that she would have a sizable gap, but we couldn't have imagined that she would have rode 10 minutes faster than pretty much everyone or more, and she looked fine coming into T2. In fact, she had a little conversation with Rinny, saying that she thought she had just missed Daniela Reef's bike course record, but in fact we heard that she actually tied it with 2:18 flat. Again, she took her time in transition, enough time that Rinny thought she could ask her for an interview. But then Taylor got to work on the run, and even though she had probably enough time that she could have walked it to the finish line, she ended up producing the third fastest run split of the day. But it was interesting behind her, because Fenella Langridge and Paula Findlay came off the bike together, but Fenella unfortunately had to quickly stop, turn around, and make sure she picked up whatever she dropped so she didn't get a littering penalty, and she got going again. and she looked like she was flying, but now Paula had a little bit of a gap, and that was probably demoralizing for Fenella, who was having a great race. That was the last she would see of Paula in the end. And next up, she would see Emma Pallant-Brown, who'd made her way to just 1 minute and 40 seconds down off of the bike, and she was charging. She'd actually suffered a terrible bike crash leading up into this race, but clearly she wasn't affected by it too much. And she was on a mission for redemption because she'd also passed out in Miami in the month prior, and it wasn't long before she had overtaken Fenella Langridge at about the 3-mile mark, and her sights were set on Paula Findlay. And it didn't take too much longer for her to overtake Paula, and she got into that second place position, which was the best she was ever going to do on this day, although there was more drama to come at the end of the race, but we'll get to that in a little bit. It also seemed like at this point that the women's race was all wrapped up as far as the positions went, but there was a little bit more drama to come right at the end, because Grace Thek and Danielle Lewis had also found their running legs, and they were absolutely flying and trying to get as many positions as they could. And they were probably also thinking about those Pro Series points where you lose a point per second behind the leader. Now, Taylor Knibb didn't do anybody any favors at this race, winning by such a big margin. In fact, she won by almost 11 minutes over Emma Pallant-Brown, so not too many points handed out here for the women, but every second that they could mitigate, they were going to do. And sure enough, Grace Thek, off of coming off the bike in 7th place, she managed to work her way up into 4th, and then Danielle Lewis was in a sprint finish there at the end with Fenella Langridge and got the better of her, so she picked up that 5th place spot, while Fenella Langridge fell back to 6th. But the drama didn't stop there, because we found out that Emma Pallant-Brown had been disqualified for speeding in the no speed limit area on the bike course. Thankfully for her though, it was overturned, and she did get that 2nd place finish and qualified for the 70.3 World Champs, and hopefully has broken some of that bad luck she's had recently. Overall, a fantastic women's race, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of this Ironman Pro Series coming up. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you in the next one.